My name is Conal and I started a company called Talent Prospecting to help organizations identify and retain their best employees. I have an innovative methodology that means employees are recognized on merit for what they do, regardless of whether they're introverted or extroverted or where they come from. Today I'm going to use the high-tech and wonderfully nostalgic medium of paint to talk you through some of the reasons I started the company and why staff recognition and retention, if done correctly, can transform your business. So, first off, we're going to talk about Price's Law, which states that in a productive enterprise like your business, 50% of the productive work is done by the square root of the number of employees. In this case, you have 400 staff. Likely 20 are these hyper-productive, innovative, extraordinary people. These people are rare and precious, and that's why I refer to them as hidden gems. You have to get these people in positions where they can have the biggest impact. Now, when I speak to business owners, many of them parrot what the US Supreme Court's verdict on pornography in 1964 was, and they say something like, "I know it when I see it," when referring to talent. I invite you to try this. You may be able, if your company has 20 employees or even 50 or maybe 100, to identify the most impactful people who are doing the hardest work and who are creating an environment where others can thrive in your company. They're creating the most value. What if you have 200 or 300? Or what if you have 1,000 employees? Who are the individuals you're jotting down in your succession plan? Who are you planning to build around for a successful future? Remember, exceptional employees can be at any level, and all that is gold does not glitter, at least not initially. Be mindful too that median tenure in tech is around 1.5 to 2.5 years. Exceptional people are too valuable, and the likelihood that they will leave if not recognized is too high. There's another reason you might overlook top talent. It's so easy to mistake confidence for competence. And remember, in business, the overlap between those who feel confident and those who are actually competent is around 9%. So the two are barely related. This is what I set up talent prospecting to solve. So let's look at this statement here. You have to be able to sell yourself to get ahead in business. One of my goals in talent prospecting is to ensure this is not the case in the business world in 5 years' time. But for the purposes of this, let's play out this scenario just to show how damaging it can be for your business. So the red arrow here indicates those who are more inclined to self-promote, more adept at self-promotion. They rise more quickly in business. The blue arrow opposite, these are the people who are more humble. Now that doesn't mean less able. It just means they're not thinking less of themselves, but they think of themselves less. These people do not get noticed as quickly. I'm going to share a little story about how I've seen this play out across dozens of organizations. So this is what happens. We'll call this person Dave. Dave might be in a sales team or a marketing team. He's extremely extroverted. He's short-term goal-oriented. He's talkative. He's rather self-centered. He achieves incredible metrics. He gets noticed. He talks constantly in meetings and makes a splash. Remember, splashes, though interesting and momentarily exciting, do not change the fundamental nature of the water one bit. This is the exact same in business. So Dave stretches the truth to breaking point and beyond, and in internal interviews, and the company mistakes Dave's confidence for competence. And he gets a promotion, maybe another, maybe even another. And eventually the rocket, powered by his own sense of self-importance, crashes into this wall here. And I call that competence. That's the Peter principle, by the way. People rising to their level of incompetence. And this happens much more quickly if they're like Dave. Dave is one of those fake it till you make it types. But let me tell you, there are no quick fixes on the road to proficiency. And promoting somebody like Dave can be so damaging. to the long-term success and development of more capable, worthy employees. Now, business leaders tell me all the time, they know plenty of people like Dave that come across them, and these people get found out eventually. I contend that eventually is way too late and it's too expensive. Mary is signified by this star here. So let me tell you about Mary. And I've seen loads of these in companies. She has the business curse called humility, which, despite what everybody mentions in their culture, basically hampers people's progress in their careers. So she's super humble. She's hyper productive. She's a problem solver. She's a team player who delights in helping those around her. She makes others better. Now, a lot of this work is done in the background because those things pre-talent prospecting couldn't be measured or metriced. Now they can. Mary's highly adaptable. She's honest. She's trustworthy. She's confident but not boastful, unlike Dave. So everyone who works with her knows it, and her reward for being what I call a culture role model is that her boss sees her ability and rewards her by giving her more work. Now, everybody has been shown in your company that you reward people who self-promote, who are all flash and no substance and all talk and very little ability. They're rewarded with promotion and advancement. Mary's exceptionally high standards over time are seen as the norm and they're expected of her. Familiarity breeds content, and the only time she really gets any sort of recognition from her manager is negative if her standards slip up for a month, because he is so accustomed to her incredible high standards that she'll only get noticed when maybe she makes a mistake or does something wrong. This is poisonous for your culture. And then also in terms of your culture, well, it isn't much of a meritocracy now, is it? Employees see that the more productive will be rewarded with more work plus less recognition. For the hidden gem, like Mary, they know how able they are. Their teammates know. And they get overlooked and under-recognized. And this, in my experience, leads to burnout and disenfranchisement. More often than not, exit from the company to someone who will appreciate them. That is your culture now. Culture is not what's written on your website or daubed on the walls of your office buildings, which is more often than not just some plagiarized variation of Alexander Dumas' All for One and One for All. That's not your culture. Culture is the lived experience of your employees, day in, day out. How they respond to challenges, how they treat each other. What's their attitude like at work? Do they have a positive attitude towards challenges and work? Do they lift each other in hard times? That's your culture. One of the huge issues I've seen in business is that if there is an incredible employee like Mary, who is humble and not inclined to blow her own trumpet, she is told that her reluctance to self-promote and sell herself, that's a weakness. That she for some reason needs to lean in more and make more noise in meetings. She already fulfills the criteria to be an exceptional leader, somebody you want to build around. She should not need to adopt a fake persona of arrogance so that others recognize her. I started talent prospecting because I truly do not believe in this change the people approach that has crept into business. It has led to people taking up positions of authority in companies, management roles, even higher into executive roles, just because they have an inflated opinion of how competent they are. So in this case, it's really important to be aware of the findings of Doctors Christine Exley and Judd Kessler. Men rate their performance 33% higher than equally performing women. This is why the results of older types of recognition surveys, such as the 360 review, are at best a waste of time. They're at worst, they're damaging to your business. You're asking people to objectively rate their own performance. You're rewarding dishonesty. If people are humble and more honest about their performance, of course, if they're self-aware, they're going to say there's places I need to improve, I can get better. Those who have a complete lack of self-awareness and exaggerate or a perceived ability that they don't have. They perceive themselves as being really fantastic at their jobs. These people will, of course, perform really, really well in these surveys because they love to self-promote and they're adept at it and they do it naturally. Now, what I want to do in business is create a culture where we have manager listeners. And I don't mean people who think they're good listeners, because this is 90% of people. But in business, only 8% of employees believe their managers are good listeners. There's a massive gap here. Put humble people in positions where they can have the biggest impact. They will naturally foster a team environment where people are not afraid to make their opinions heard, and this leads to an innovative culture where people have the psychological safety at work to bring ideas forward to improve the business, and they have the trust in their manager because their manager will listen to them and take their opinions seriously, rather than a lot of managers I've worked with in the past who talk 90% of the time and they listen up. And I mean that quite literally. They listen in an upwardly direction to those in positions of authority above them. So they only pay cursory attention to the people, say their team. But when their manager or their boss's boss, when they say something, then they're suddenly all ears. It's also important to be aware here that I did not develop talent prospecting as a method to push women into positions of authority in companies that they're not ready for. I developed the talent prospecting method to help companies recognize the efforts of all their employees, regardless of what they look like or where they come from. If a byproduct of this is that you eventually end up with more women in leadership positions in your business, well, I'll lose zero sleep if that's the case. So how to ensure everybody's hard work is recognized in your company? Well, I've spent 6 months working with HR leaders and psychologists and consultants to develop my positive peer recognition methodology. A friend of mine who's a HR manager in a large firm called my methodology like taking a picture of your company from the back. And I love this because founders and C-level executives have difficulty identifying top employees, as the view from the top, from their position, can be very opaque as you look down through the hierarchical tiers of your business. My methodology does not allow for self-promotion, so selling yourself is no longer a prerequisite for business success. It is tried and tested and identifies those extraordinarily talented people in your company, whether they're introverts or extroverts, and regardless of weight, race, or gender. If you want to create a culture where employees are rewarded on merit and allows everyone an equal chance to shine, it's not about promoting one person over another. It's about getting your best people in positions where they can have the greatest impact. Why is this important to your succession planning? To ensure you have the right people, in your company are put on a path so they can take up leadership roles in your organization. Let me tell you, if you identify a hidden gem within the first year in your company, they're more likely to stay long-term, 4.5 plus years. Secondly, the happiness of your staff is disproportionately dependent on your manager. Workplace happiness is 87% dependent on your manager and 13% dependent on other co-workers. If you think this is disproportionately high, just cast your mind back to the last time you had a bad manager and how this affected your work. If you get internal promotion wrong in your company, you get everything wrong. It affects everyone. If you want to identify and retain your best employees, book a consultation today, partner with talent prospecting, and together, in a gentle way, we can change the business world.